rejoice in the Lord always. And again I say, rejoice in the Lord always. And again I say, rejoice. Come bless the Lord, come bless the Lord, draw near to worship Christ the Lord, and bless his name, his holy name, declaring he is good. Come bless the Lord, come bless the Lord, draw near to worship Christ the Lord, and bless his name, his holy name, declaring he is good.
Good morning, First Covenant Church. Welcome to our Sunday morning online worship service. We're glad that you have decided to join us. I just want to, first of all, just welcome everyone and then just give you some reminders of what we have planned through the end of February. First of all, we send out Friday update emails. If you haven't had a chance to sign up for our email list, but you'd like to, please go to First Cov. That's 1stcov.org and click on the Connect tab, and you can, through our Connect card, get information set up with us so we can keep you up to date. As you can tell, this is January 30th, 2022, and we are having an online video only, no in person. But next week, February 6th, we will be having an in-person gathering for a conversation at 10 a.m., which is our new start time for all things. At 10 a.m., and we're going to have that in room 250, 252. For those of you that have been here before, that's where our children's programming has traditionally taken place, second floor in the education side of the building. It's a wonderful room that we will require masks, and we will have room to spread out and be socially distant. And we do know that it's still such an uncertain time with the Omicron variant. We understand that, but we also understand the need that we just have to start pressing in and trying to find safe ways that we can gather in person again. We just have to start moving forward. And so the leadership team for this February 6th conversation it's them heading it up, and really the agenda is we just want to talk. So the agenda is no agenda other than to just listen, to see how everyone's doing, to catch up, to answer any questions. It's just a very conversational time. And if you're interested, we would love to have you join us. The leadership team is also looking into an online option, some kind of Zoom meeting. Current thinking is that it'll be maybe a little later on that week after February 6th. Once again, just keep your eyes open for it, and we will announce when we have an online option. Then February 13th, we are doing our first of this new idea of trying to bring in some outside voices that we can just get a bigger picture of what's going on in this post-George Floyd, post-mid-COVID. Just, it's such a different world. It's just really a great time for us to hear from known and trusted voices. And I'm really glad to say that we have our first person that we're going to interview, and that's Norm Blagman. Norm's been a friend of mine for many, many years. And First Cov got to know him for the years that he was here running our homeless shelter. He then went up and was the worship leader of a contemporary service at Salem Covenant Church. But that time came to an end for him this fall. And so it's just good timing for him to come in. I had a long talk with Norm a couple weeks ago, and it was just so enlightening and healing. And I just really look forward to this interview we're going to have with Norm. It will be followed by some question and answer and some discussion time as well. We want to do the same thing on February 20th, and I do have someone in mind for that in person. It's just not firmed up, but been reaching out to just some really great people that I've gotten to know through my many years of doing ministry in the Twin Cities. Then on February 27th, remember all of this is at 10 a.m., our all new sleep a little later time start. The 27th will be a worship service in the sanctuary, and we've got Robert Robinson and the gospel choir lined up to do that. Once again, more info on that as we get closer. I would like to now share some news and updates. I think if you read the email or watched the news at all, unfortunately, we partner with House of Charity in St. Stephen's, and House of Charity, as you know, has a food center just kitty corner from us, just down 7th, and take a left on Park. And unfortunately, they had a fire break out in their kitchen, and that food center for House of Charity has served 3 meals a day for a long, long time, and is a big part of food distribution in the downtown area. And it's tragic, but I am grateful to say that it's just an example of our partnership with House of Charity and St. Stephen's allowed for a really quick response for our kitchen here at First Cov to help be part of that solution. We're still working on how that will be resolved in the long term, but we're just really grateful for our partners there and want them to know that our thoughts and prayers go out to St. Stephen's House of Charity as they work to figure out how to replace this much needed source. Also, I want to pass along that we received a forwarded encouragement regarding our Easttown apartments. And I just want to read this encouragement. This was sent to us. I am working with my neighbors to welcome an Afghan refugee family to Minneapolis next month. This past week, we made an agreement with Easttown Apartments for a large 2-bedroom unit there. So your work is providing a home to people who have suffered a lot and who will soon be among us. Thank you for your vision. It's just good we know that Easttown is blessing people, but it's really good to just hear those direct words of encouragement. And which leads me to just saying thank you for your support. And I just love that when you support First Cov, it's way more than just a church service. It is a people that have gathered together to really create a difference that's a lasting difference in housing, in the childcare that we offer at Metro Kids, the counseling that goes on with St. Stephen's House of Charity and the shelter. Just all these things is what makes this place just a wonderful blessing to this community. So thank you so much for your support. If you'd like to give, once again, our website, firstcov.org, that's 1stcov.org, and you can click the donate tab. Thank you for your time, and thanks for being a part of hanging in there with the online and the switching back and forth, but we really look forward to seeing people in person next Sunday.
We shall not give up the fight. We have only started. We shall not give up the fight. We have only started. We have only started. We have only started. We shall not give up the fight. We have only started. We have only started. We have only started. We shall not give up the fight. We have only started. We have only started. We have only started. We shall not give up the fight. We have only started. We have only started. We have only started. Yeah. We shall not give up on peace. We have only started. We shall not give up on peace. We have only started. We have only started. We have only started. We shall not give up on peace. We have only started. We have only started. We have only started. We shall not give up on peace. We have only started. We have only started. We have only started. We shall not give up on peace. We have only started. We have only started. We have only started. We'll put an end to bigotry. Hands holding hand. We'll put an end to bigotry. Hand holding hand. Hand holding hand. Hand holding hand. We'll put an end to bigotry. Hand holding hand. Hand holding hand. Hand holding hand. We'll put an end to bigotry. Hand holding hand. Hand holding hand. Hand holding hand. We'll put an end to bigotry. Hand holding hand. Hand holding hand. Hand holding hand. Let's do one more. Together we'll have victory. Hand holding hand. Together we'll have victory. Hand holding hand. Hand holding hand. Hand holding hand. Together we'll have victory. Hand holding hand. Hand holding hand. Hand holding hand. Together we'll have victory. Hand holding hand. Hand holding hand. Hand holding hand. Together we'll have victory. Hand holding hand. Hand holding hand. Hand holding hand.
Good morning, First Cove. Welcome back to our story moment. My name is Heather, and this week I was thinking about how we shape each other. How maybe someone who came way long before me paved the way for how I live my life today. Or maybe how I can help a friend's life be better, or a family member's life be better, or someone in my community. And that feels kind of abstract, but I think it's something that we can all learn from. And as we think about it, this idea of almost legacy. How do you live your life, and how does that impact other people? And how have other people's lives impacted your own, even if you've never met them? So, to illustrate what I'm talking about, the book I want to bring to you today is one I found a couple years ago and I really love, and it's called Alma and How She Got Her Name. And I think it's a wonderful story about how we're all connected and how through family we're connected to people we've never met, but the actions of those around us and before us affect us. And so how can we affect the people after us? So here we go. Without further ado, Alma and How She Got Her Name by Juana Martinez Neal. Alma Sofia Esperanza Jose Pura Candela had a long name. Too long, if you asked her. My name is so long, Daddy. It never fits, Alma said. Come here, he said. Let me tell you the story of your name. Then you decide if it fits. Sophia was your grandmother, he began. She loved books, poetry, jasmine flowers, and of course me. She was the one who taught me to read. I love books and flowers, and you too, Daddy. I am Sophia. Esperanza was your great-grandmother, he continued. She hoped to travel, but never left the city where she was born. Her only son grew up to cross the 7 seas. Wherever her sailor son went, so did Esperanza's heart. The world is so big. I want to go see it, Daddy. You and me together. I am Esperanza. Jose was my father, almost Daddy said. He was an artist with a big family, what many people had back then. Early each morning, he walked to the mountains and the plazas to paint everyday life. Sometimes I went along. Your grandfather taught me to see and love our people. I wake up early every day and I draw a lot too. This morning I drew a kitty cat for you, Daddy. I am Jose. Pura was your great aunt. She believed that the spirits of our ancestors are always watching over us. When you were born, she tied a red string around your wrist, a charm to keep you safe. Hi, Pura. It's me, Alma. Candela was your other grandmother. She always stood up for what was right. I am Candela. I love the story of my name. Now tell me about Alma, Daddy. Where does that come from? Well, I picked the name Alma just for you. You are the first and the only Alma. You will make your own story. Alma, Sofia, Esperanza, Jose, Pura Candela. That's my name, and it fits me just right. I am Alma, and I have a story to tell. And that is the end. Here's a little note from Juana, the author, that I thought was lovely. My name is Juana Carlota Martinez Pizarro. My father named me Juana after his mother, Juana Francisca. My mother chose the name Carla to honor the memory of her uncle Carlos. My father was a man of decisions, so when it was time to register my birth, he changed Carla to Carlota on the birth certificate. He was convinced that Juana Carlota was a mighty name he wanted for his daughter. Thanks to that change, I got stuck with what I thought was one of the most old-fashioned, harsh, ugly, and way too Spanish name of all. In Lima, Peru, where I grew up. Little did I know that later on, after I moved to the United States, it would feel unique and remind me every day of where I come from. And then it asks, what's the story of your name? What story would you like to tell? And that's the end of Alma and how she got her name. So that's a bit of a family history story, but it doesn't have to just be within family. How we leave a legacy and make a change, and how people who come before us have affected us, maybe in ways we don't even realize. And it's exciting to look into that. So, as you go into your week, think about that. Maybe you actually have a connection to your name, or maybe you have hobbies and things you do that, that came from somewhere. Where did that come from? It's excited to feel connected to each other, to history, to the future. So I hope this encourages you. All right. Well, I will see you next week. Bye.
If you have been following us for the past couple weeks, you know that we have been reaching back in the vast archive of videos and other service elements to put together a best of video series. And I thank all the people involved that allowed us to, gave us permission to go back and do those things. And it's been really great to reconnect, albeit through video. This week, I am going to reach back and I'm going to re-preach a sermon. It's actually a sermon that I first preached when I was the director of worship at Church of the Open Door in the early 2000s. And I have preached it here, but I think it's just a timely reminder at this point in time in this transition that we find ourselves in at First Cov. And so I think it's best if I start by telling you a quick overview of my church history. If there's a stereotype Minnesotan, it's me. My great-grandpa Anders Balgaard homesteaded land up in Ashby, Minnesota, which is just right between Alexandria and Fergus Falls. A gorgeous, gorgeous place that I've been to many times, spent many summers up there. Obviously, Lutheran, Norwegian Lutheran, predictable. And so my family, when I was born, I'm the youngest of five, we grew up out in Long Lake, Minnesota, and went to Christ Lutheran Church in Maple Plain. So that's where my church experience started, was in just a straight-up 1960s, 70s, outer suburb Lutheran church. I befriended a person in high school that was more involved in the charismatic movement that was beginning to get a lot of momentum at that time. I was involved in Young Life. I was involved in high school, and in college, went to Jesus People Church, and a huge church that used to be in the State Theater downtown, and that's when I was going to the U of M, so this is the early 80s. That church fell apart due to things that happened there, and we wound up, I got married soon after that to my wife Cheryl. We went to Village Free Church for a while, and then we moved out to the western suburbs. And at that time, the former youth pastor of Jesus People Church started a church called Vineyard of the Lake. Back then, there was a movement of churches called vineyards, and this wasn't a vineyard. We just used the name to sound cool. But that's where the youth pastor, when he was at Jesus People Church, started a ministry called the Hesed Mimes, and I worked with the mimes, and that's why, yes, I have toured Europe with a Christian mime group. Got that on my resume. And so that was in the late 80s into early 90s. That church blew up because of craziness that went on. And at that point in time, my wife and I just kind of felt like we were done with church way back then. And that was the early 90s. But then in the mid-90s, there was a church called Church of the Open Door that was known throughout this town as a place that you could go for healing. And especially it realized that a lot of people were getting beat up in Christian churches, being manipulated, and it just wound up falling victim to the business of church. And so it was a really great forward-thinking place. And I started helping out a friend who was a music minister there, became an associate position for me. And then in, I think it was 1999, I became the worship pastor for this church that was about 2,000 plus people at the time. We built a $25 million facility in Maple Grove when I was there, and I wrapped up my time in 2004. So when I was there, I didn't study in seminary or anything. I just was a part of church and a part of the Christian movement my whole life. And so when I was an associate applying to be the head of that music department, the church asked me my philosophy of worship. And I was like, oh, philosophy of worship. I should get me one of them fancy philosophies of worship. And so at the time, my mom had gifted me a New American Standard Bible that was my go-to Bible in all those formative years. There's so much underlining. If you don't know, I'm addicted to highlighter. You'll see highlighting here even. And so it was just written on and all that kind of stuff. And it had a really great concordance in the back. And so I just started there as I was trying to figure out my philosophy of worship. And I looked up the word worship in that little concordance, and it had a 2-word definition that I had never heard before in regards to worship. Bow, serve. That was it. And then, of course, it lists everywhere that word worship shows up in the Bible, right? Well, I didn't investigate it any further at the time. I used that as kind of a basis to create a philosophy of worship that was good enough to get me hired. So then, I don't know, it was probably a year or so afterwards, the staff came to me, the leadership, and said, we want you to preach a sermon on your philosophy of worship. And so at that time, I was like, well, and if you know anything about Church of the Open Door, like sermons were at least 30 minutes long. So this is like a big chunk of teaching. So I went on this journey, and that's the story I want to tell you about. And as I begin, I think you got to keep in mind that what I thought worship was as I dove into this was worship services, was gathering together with a bunch of people, singing songs, praying prayers, liturgy to sermons to all those things, to communion, all those things are worship. That's what I thought as I was entering into this. So I wanted to get into the original Greek and Hebrew, also something that was very, a value that was often used at Church of the Open Door. And at the time, it was kind of, early internet. So I actually had a CD that was Strong's Concordance, which is this go-to resource for you to look up original Greek and Hebrew words found in Scripture and get to their original definition. So I was like, this is great. So I did a quick count in the New American Standard version of the Bible. Worship came up 152 times. And I'm going to be the research scientist that's going to figure this out. 110 times in the Old Testament, 42 times in the New Testament. And so as I dove into the first chunk of the original books of the Bible, the Old Testament is what we commonly call it, I quickly found out that there was 2 different ways that worship was interpreted. The first time that the word worship shows up is when God commands Abraham to sacrifice his only son, Isaac. And I know that's a tough story to start with. I wish it was an easier one. That takes a lot of teaching to talk about that difficult story. But that's the first time worship shows up in the Bible. And it was Genesis 22, verse 5. It says, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." So that was the first time it showed up. So I click on that word in my Bible software, and it comes up the word shakha. Shakha. So you click on the definition, and I was like, okay, this is weird, but let's try it. Shakha, to bow down, to depress, to bow down, to prostrate oneself before a superior in homage, before God in worship. So clearly, this first definition of the first time the word shows up, it means to bow. So, real quick on that, bow is an interesting word. We're going to get into that a little more. But we as red-blooded Americans don't like to bow. We left England because we decided to not bow to the king and queen of that country. And so it's kind of an anti-American thing. Instead of standing up on your own, you're actually submitting and bowing to some higher authority in your life. Webster's just simply interprets the word bow as to bend the head or body in respect and an agreement to submit. And I think that word submit is a really good word when you're looking at what bow means. I am submitting my authority, my will to whoever I'm bowing to or towards. Okay, great. Very next time that worship pops up in the Bible. So now we're to the second time. Fascinating. This is now Moses bumps into the burning bush. So don't have time to get into these stories in depth. Hopefully you know them. If not, please investigate them. This is Exodus 3, verse 12. So Moses is minding his own business, walking along, and he sees this bush lit on fire. That's going to catch your attention. So he turns his attention towards that, and God speaks to Moses through the burning bush. And God says this, "Moses, I'm sending you to Pharaoh." "Who am I," says Moses, "that I should go to Pharaoh?" Then God assures Moses that he will be with him, that God will be with Moses. And then in Exodus 3, verse 12, God says, "When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain." So I clicked on that word, and a whole other definition popped up. Fascinating. This time, that word worship was interpreted abad. I'll put those on the screen as we go through here too. But abad, to work, to serve, to labor, to work for another, to serve another by labor. I mean, the definition goes on, but it just repeats about, abad means to work and to serve. So, first time was about submitting and bowing. Second time was about working. Worship's about working, about serving. Fascinating. For the next 13 times that the word worship shows up in the Bible, it is interpreted abad. Then, the first time both shakha and abad are used together is just a few chapters ahead in Exodus, when Moses receives the 10 Commandments, probably a story you've heard of. This is Exodus 20, verses 3 and 4. The first commandment God gives us is, "You shall have no other gods before me." The second commandment is this: "You shall not make for yourselves an idol in the form of anything in heaven above, or on earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not shakha, bow down to them, or abad, worship them." So he puts two, which I think is interesting because obviously there's a distinction that one word wouldn't cover it. That in this commandment that's very all-inclusive, big statement, you shall neither bow down or serve any other God other than the Lord your God. All right. Basically, that's the Old Testament. It's those two examples. Fascinating, thought I. Now we will jump from the Old Testament to the New Testament. Now here's where I was hopeful, because we got 42 times the word worship shows up in the New Testament. And instead of just two options, I found 5 different ways it was interpreted. And this starts to make me feel good because I'm trying to do this philosophy of worship, for crying out loud, and all I get is bow and serve. I'm a little troubled that I'll be able to actually pull this off and make any connection to what we do on Sunday mornings, right? But I'm starting to feel good. So when I find the word, one of the ways it's interpreted is sebomai. I'm starting to feel like I'm treading on some familiar territory because as I look up sebomai, it means to revere, to adore, devout religious worship. Yes, yes, yes. I found my word. I'm going to be able to really dig into this sebomai and figure out what the whole deal is about. But, much to my chagrin, out of the 42 times that the word worship shows up, sebomai just gets 4 of them. 2 of them are in the same story, told in 2 different Gospels, Mark and Matthew. In Matthew 15, the Pharisees are trying to accuse Jesus and his disciples of not performing the traditional hand washing before their meal. So they're busting them on a legality, right? Jesus instead confronts the Pharisees with their tradition of giving money to the church that should have gone to support their parents. So Jesus kind of busts their chops on this. Jesus knew the reason that they did this was to gain a reputation of piety in the church and to have a great excuse to not support the folks, right? So Jesus saw through that, and he nails the Pharisees as hypocrites. And then he says this in verses 8 and 9 of Matthew 15. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship sebomai me in vain. Their teachings are but rules taught by men. The next time sebomai is found is when Satan is tempting Christ to worship sebomai him. And then the last time was around when Jews were trying to jail the Apostle Paul, later on in the Bible. There you go. My hopeful word, dashed. The only time it's used is just like in nothing but a negative light, never spoken of positively. Okay, next word. Still got hope, because the next one is threskia, which is ceremonial observance, religious worship. Yes, okay. Didn't do well with sebomai, but threskia is going to be good. This word sounds hopeful, certainly familiar. It is found only twice in the book of Colossians, chapter 2, 18 and 19, where it says this: do not let anyone who delights in false humility and the worship, threskia, of angels disqualify you from the prize. Such a person goes into great detail about what he has seen and what his unspiritual mind puffs him up with idle notions. He has lost connection to the head. Great. That one's not going to work real well. Later in verses 22 and 23, a slightly different version of that word shows up with the connotation of piety, where it says, these are all destined to perish with use because they are based on human commands and teachings. Such regulations indeed have an appearance of wisdom with their self-imposed worship, threskia, a little different version of it. With their self-imposed worship, threskia. Okay. Threskia gets really low marks. Eusebeo, next one, number 3. And it means to be pious, to show piety, to act reverently. Okay, finally, let's go. This one is interesting because piety means to be devout and godly and holy, to revere, devotion, religion. One would think this would be used more. Okay, it's only found once in Acts 17:23 in the context of ignorantly worshiping idols. 3 down, 2 to go. Do you see where this might be leading? The 4th option, got 2 left, proskuneo, and it means to kiss the hand in token reverence, to fall upon the knees and touch the ground with the forehead as an expression of profound reverence, to kneel, to lie prostrate, to do homage, or make obeisance, which basically is another way of saying what? To bow. Right? To fall upon the knees and touch the ground with your head kind of sounds like bowing. So we have bow. Proskuneo is used 8 times in the Gospels. The first time the word worship shows up in the New Testament is when the Magi come and proskuneo at the crib of Jesus. Kings coming to bow before a baby. Then that leaves latria or latriuo. Let's put that up on the screen. Latria, to serve or hire, to serve, to minister, the service of God, to render religious service or homage and worship, to perform sacred service or offer gifts. Here's an example of where that's used. In Romans 12, verse 1, "Therefore I urge you, brothers, in the view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of latria, of worship." And what I found in my investigation into worship was that out of 152 times the word worship is mentioned in the Bible, roughly 145 of them are interpreted either bow or serve, and all the other examples were not spoken of highly. Okay, if you made it this far, thank you. I know that's a bunch of work, but here's the deal. I've never heard that before I bumped into it. I never would have wondered about it had it not been for that interpretation in the back of my New American Standard Bible. And it really messed me up in a great way about what on earth is church about. And that's why I thought it was important to bring it to us today. I didn't know it at the time, but that sermon was a bedrock of my calling to the church and what I think that I've been looking for in the big capital C church. At the time, like I said, Church of the Open Door had recently built a wonderful facility, but it did at the time sit empty most of the week and then have a party for Jesus on the weekends. And I wanted something that every day of the week that place was being a blessing, was bowing their will and their needs to the greater needs of the community around us and then serving those needs. So I was looking for a place that had something going on every day of the week, because those are the actions of worship are bow and serve. And if those actions are in place, then the declaring of worship makes sense. It's a lot like love. There are actions of love and declarations of love. Actions followed with declarations are the best. The worst are declarations of love with no actions of love. Have you ever known someone like that? They are not present for you. They are not helpful. They are destructive people. But sure, how they manipulate the situation is they like to declare that they love you. That's offensive. Please be quiet. It's not true. What's better is actions of love, but no declarations of it. And to be honest, that was my stoic Norwegian dad. He, for sure, would quickly put his life in danger for his children. He loved us. I knew it, felt it. He just never said it. And I'll take that any day of the week over someone who says it and doesn't mean it. So it's much better, but it is sad, because actions of love followed by declarations of love are the real deal. Similarly with worship, the actions of worshiping God are to submit our will, our personal selfish needs, to the greater good of what God is birthing in our world. And then as we submit and think beyond ourselves in a bigger picture, there's stuff to do. And we need to put our hand to it and do it. And if we do submit our will to the greater things, to helping those in need, to being a friend, to providing home and shelter, and just on, just being someone who reaches out and considers the needs of others. And then we do that, well, then I'll tell you what, it's time to confess and profess and proclaim. And then there are other words in the Bible, don't get me wrong. It is good to gather together. It is good to celebrate. We didn't jump into the word celebrate. We didn't jump into the word, declaration or proclamation. All those things are wonderful things. Gathering together is good and healthy and necessary. It's just not worship. It's an expression, it's a declaration of that worship, but we can't get the cart ahead of the horse. So part of the reason that I want to bring this up is that, folks, you got to know that this is why I came to First Covenant Church, is because we do put the actions of worship into play 7 days a week. Something that I think we need to recognize is that we have for years been working on these actions of worship. And because of that, we have 169 affordable housing units, and we have a homeless shelter that is now running 24/7. And we're smart enough to know that we should partner with other entities to do that and not try to do everything ourselves. Metro Kids has been going on for, many years and blessing families. I know that we used to house Good Arts Collective, and if you haven't heard, they closed down. COVID did a number to them, but I do hope that in the future we can rekindle an arts portion of how we are gracious and giving in what we do. And so as we come together and wonder about who are we, and part of what I love is that if we don't have a Sunday service here, there's still a really big need to have this building up and going and doing what it does, because it blesses people every day of the week. And so as we look at this liminal space of talking and wondering, I just think it's really important to keep in mind that we have something that is alive and well here. Would you pray with me? Dear God, as you know, there's a lot on my heart, and I really hope that these words land in such a way that that you reveal what you need to reveal through this. It's hard when this revelation happened to me to try to tell that story again, to create the same feeling I had, but I desire that for all who hear this and wonder about it. Lord, part of it is I pray that they wouldn't take my word for it, and that they would dig into this for themselves and wonder about if this is really true. Because it is in that primary digging, not through someone else, but through our own investigation in pursuit of you, that we find you. So I do pray for that. And Lord, is in this in-between time, may your goodness and mercy and grace be all around us as we reconnect and as we bow and serve together as a community. In Jesus' name, amen.
Let us love one another, for love comes from God. Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone
is not